Hi everyone, Noah here. I thought before we get into the episode, I just wanted to hop on here and share a couple of thoughts as this is the last Bottom Line Upfront episode of the year. When I first took this kind of research job, fellowship, you name it, I was really not sure, what is a think tank, what do they do? I think after a couple months on the job, I think I have an answer to that, and it's because of what you all have told me about why you listen to the podcast or why you read the Substack. It's because you want to learn more about the world, and you want an honest reflection, you want truth, you want fact, and you want to make your own conclusions about what's going on in the world. And I think that's the important thing of what research and what information is, because ideas are important, and the way that we present these ideas are important. And so I'm so grateful that everyone here has given me a platform and has, stayed in touch with what's going on in the world and what's going on with me and my research. And I really appreciate that. But without further ado, here is the episode.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation
Pakistan
Day.
claimed it has credible intelligence that India plans to take imminent military action against
Technology
its
shares
country.
on Wall Street have fallen sharply in response to the emergence of a low-cost chatbot built by a
The
Chinese
Trump
artificial
administration
intelligence
launched
firm.
its 22nd strike on an alleged drug boat Thursday.
Fighters from Sudan's Rapid Support Forces celebrating in front of the Umdam municipal headquarters in North Kurdistan. They seized it in the early hours of Monday
Right
after
now,
intense
a
battles
coup
with the
has
army.
been confirmed in Guinea-Bissau.
After days of intense negotiations in Egypt, Israel, and Hamas, both at the table talking over President Trump's 20-point peace plan.
In 2025, the world raced towards AI development. Power changed hands. The global order began to shift, and armed conflict served as a reminder that there is still much work to be done. So, what were the main trends of 2025 in international security? And what should we be on the lookout for in the next year? Welcome to the season finale of Bottom Line Upfront. Today is Sunday, December 21st, 2025. I'm Noah Tan, and this is 2025, The World in BLUF. First, 2025 was the year when AI and tech dominated. Following the Bletchley Conference in 2023, which sought to address AI safety and frontier risks, 2025 built upon the original mandate to make AI safer, more secure, and more inclusive. In February, the EU AI Act prohibitions went into effect, prohibiting emotion recognition in workplaces and biometric categorization. Other AI safety acts, such as SB 53 in the US, attempted to manage safety concerns of AI development. Meanwhile, the G7 summit in June emphasized creating inclusive economies that invested in AI adoption while working to close the digital gap between the G7 and the Global South. But 2025 also highlighted the dangers of AI-enabled warfare, whether that be Ukraine using AI-enabled terminal guidance for counterforce targeting, or Anthropic's report that warned of LLM-enabled cyber attacks. This year was also a reminder that while the iron curtain of AI is closing, it hasn't fallen quite yet. With the development and adoption of AI outpacing reactive policy responses, technology and its components became the medium through which great power competition played out between the US and China. This sometimes meant prohibiting Chinese access to AI model weights through the short-lived AI diffusion rule, or sometimes through things that had little to do with AI at all, such as the TikTok ban standoff in January over ByteDance's refusal to divest. But it also meant broader export restrictions and licenses on entities and technologies that fed into the strategic calculus of AI competition, such as Washington temporarily expanding export controls to any entity under majority Chinese ownership, the US and China agreeing to a one-year waiver of American chip restrictions in exchange for China delaying rare earth exports bans, or Trump licensing H200 chips to China this December. And the AI and tech landscape revealed a new Cold War, the bifurcated world. In March, China outlined its bet on AI, decouple from US supply chains, and become economically self-sufficient. It has demonstrated this strategy through developing competing AI models like DeepSeek that shocked the world in January, to Manhattan-like projects to indigenously produce advanced chip lithography machines. Meanwhile, under America's AI Action Plan released in July, The Trump administration shifted to a strategy of innovation, AI infrastructure, and promoting America's AI stack abroad. For the US, this meant pouring billions into the development of frontier models like ChatGPT 5, Gemini 3, and Opus 4.5. But watch out, America, 2025 also raised concerns of a potential AI bubble that could be a repeat of the dot-com crash or 2008 financial crisis. 2025 has revealed a bifurcated world led by China and the US in an aggressive attempt to outdevelop, out-adopt, and outsell the rest of the world on the value propositions of their respective tech stacks. Now let's turn to 2025, the year when power changed hands, whether we wanted it to or not. Let's talk first about those who won it. The year of elections brought a decisive shift towards the right as voters prioritized economic stability and security, with some exceptions. 2025 began with the inauguration of US President Donald Trump after winning the 2024 election. Germany's Friedrich Merz was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany following the collapse of the previous traffic light coalition. Meanwhile in France, President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu navigated multiple no-confidence votes and calls to dissolve parliament. By the end of the year, the international order appeared more transactional and localized as leaders like Poland's new EU presidency prioritized regional resilience over the idealistic multilateralism of the past. Canada experienced a surprising leadership swap as Mark Carney replaced Justin Trudeau, eventually leading the Liberals to a narrow victory by abandoning unpopular carbon policies and stalling the momentum of Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. In the Southern Hemisphere, Argentina's Javier Milei consolidated his mandate to cut spending and reduce inflation in the October midterms, while Bolivia ended nearly 2 decades of socialist rule by electing centrist Rodrigo Paz. Even in Ecuador, Daniel Noboa successfully defended his presidency on a platform of military-led security, proving that the public's appetite for iron fist governance remained a potent force throughout 2025. In Australia, Anthony Albanese and his centre-left Labour Party won a second term. In Asia, South Korea formally impeached and removed Yoon Suk-yeol for his botched coup and establishment of martial law. Japan elected Sanae Takaichi, a hardline nationalist and Japan's first female prime minister. Now we turn to those who took it or those who tried. 2025 was also defined by coups in Madagascar and Guinea-Bissau, and coup attempts in Armenia and Benin. In September, a dramatic Gen Z protest in Nepal over the government's social media ban and silencing of dissent led to the ousting of the country's prime minister and a subsequent election on Discord. Even countries that held elections were marred by criticisms that they were neither free nor fair, such as in the Philippines, Myanmar, Tanzania, and Belarus. Finally, there are those who are still in the fight. Beyond the settled transitions, 2025 closes with several unfinished fights where the struggle for sovereignty and stability remains a daily reality. In Honduras, the November 30th general election has dissolved into a tense constitutional standoff and remains paralyzed by a manual recount of thousands of inconsistent ballots and allegations of US interference. Meanwhile, the Tibetan spiritual landscape faced a historic pivot on July 2nd when the 14th Dalai Lama reaffirmed his intent to reincarnate and preempted Beijing's Golden Urn selection process to the autonomy of his successor through a private institutional trust. The year's unrest culminated in Bangladesh, where the assassination of youth leader Sharif Osman Hadi sparked nationwide riots and arson against media houses, threatening to derail the fragile transition towards the 2026 elections. 2025 was the year that was defined by transactional diplomacy and economic warfare. Let's start with quid pro quos. In October, the Trump administration brokered a peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, which traded US involvement in mediating the agreement and providing security training for preferential access to rare minerals. Middle powers such as the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India, and Kenya, among others, also took advantage of their strategic position between the US-China AI race by positioning themselves as trusted nodes of compute, brokering transactional neutrality, and investing trillions into AI infrastructure through investments and sovereign wealth funds. Let's now turn to tit for tats. Weaponized interdependence was the phrase for economic security this year, as the US and China transitioned from competitive trade to an all-out economic conflict marked by Trump's trade war starting in February, and his April Liberation Day tariffs, which led to a drop-off in US assets and a severe downturn in the stock market. Beijing responded by imposing retaliatory tariffs on several American exports, from coal, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil to agricultural machinery and large engine cars. China also banned critical minerals essential for Western defense manufacturing. 2025 was the year of extraterritorial influence. In 2025, the United States fundamentally redefined the boundaries of extraterritorial power. This expansive extrajudicial executive authority was mirrored by the March 15th deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to a Salvadoran prison and the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act to summarily remove foreign nationals. The U.S. also conducted targeted military operations within sovereign territory and waters of other nations. On March 15th, U.S. air and naval strikes leveled dozens of Houthi radar and missile complexes in Yemen, eventually forcing a May ceasefire, where the group ceased targeting American vessels while maintaining its focus on Israel. This new paradigm of maritime interdiction reached a lethal climax on September 2nd, when the U.S. Navy carried out the first in a series of airstrikes on vessels in Venezuelan waters, raising questions of whether the administration violated international law. The year's most significant escalation occurred in June, when U.S. B-2 stealth bombers dropped bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities. Okay, now let's turn to 2025, the year when the weaknesses of institutions were exposed. In 2025, the structural weaknesses of the liberal international order were laid bare as key institutions faced a sovereignty-first rebellion from both superpowers and regional players. The year opened with President Trump's executive orders to withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization and the Paris Agreement. With the retreat of U.S. involvement in European affairs, emphasized in the 2025 National Security Strategy, this year's NATO summit had to contend with the alliance in a post-U.S. leadership future. In June, Hungary became the first EU member to withdraw from the International Criminal Court to host a state visit from Benjamin Netanyahu, who was facing an International Criminal Court arrest warrant. And on October 22nd, the International Court of Justice issued a landmark advisory opinion reaffirming Israel's obligations as an occupying power and explicitly banning the use of starvation in Gaza. However, Israel's immediate dismissal of the ruling should remind us that the international system, for all its legal obligations and enforcement mechanisms, is still one that hinges upon state compliance. Finally, in International Security 2025, this year was the year when war didn't determine who was right, only who was left. 2025 was a year of continued conflict. The Sudanese armed forces and paramilitary rapid support forces remained locked in a bitter civil war. Both sides continued to block aid as a weapon of war, and the situation has gained widespread attention for war crimes in El Fasher. Despite a peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwandan-backed paramilitary groups, AFC/M23, M23 rebels captured key cities in North Kivu, rendering the truce moot. In Asia, a terrorist attack in Kashmir sparked the four-day war and led to a serious escalation in armed conflict between India and Pakistan before a ceasefire in May. In late October, the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord ushered in a ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, which had been fighting over a border dispute, but the ceasefire seems to be near collapse due to recent flare-ups over border skirmishes. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the Gaza Strip has been ravaged by the Israel-Hamas war since October 2023, with tens of thousands killed, wounded, or taken hostage. But on November 17th, the UN Security Council approved a Trump administration-backed peace plan to persuade both sides to maintain a ceasefire, engage in prisoner swaps, and create an international stabilization force to ensure the security of Gaza and manage its political transition until the end of 2027. While the ceasefire is holding, it is hanging by a thread. Finally, the Russo-Ukrainian war has become a war of attrition and a protracted conflict, with a frontline zone along the eastern region of Ukraine. The US largely circumvented European and Ukrainian input to propose its 28-point peace plan, which was criticized for largely capitulating to Moscow's demands. The Europeans responded with their own counterproposal. And Putin has signaled that he is open to peace, but under the conditions that Ukraine give up the 4 annexed regions and rejects any future bids to join NATO. Okay, wow, that was a lot to cover. But let's talk about the year to come. I mean, if you asked me at the end of 2024 whether I expected any of this to happen, I'd probably guess less than 1% of it. So obviously trying to predict what will transpire in 2026 will be a nearly impossible task. But I can leave you with 3 things to look out for in international security in the coming year. In 2026, the global security architecture will face a critical transition as the New START Treaty expires on February 5th, marking the first time in decades that US and Russian nuclear arsenals will be unconstrained by formal limits. If this treaty lapses, it may trigger a trilateral arms race with China, Russia, and the US prioritizing unconstrained modernization and strategic ambiguity over transparency. Simultaneously, the cyber landscape may be transformed by agentic AI, shifting from assisted tools to autonomous hacking agents capable of executing end-to-end attacks at machine speeds. Agentic AI can be either a powerful tool or a dangerous weapon. The dual-use nature of this technology is particularly concerning. Keep an eye out for where agentic AI is applied. Finally, space may solidify itself as an active combat domain, moving beyond support roles into kinetic and electronic warfare. The deployment of Stalker satellites and the advancement of counter-space weapons projects like the US Golden Dome will increase the risk of tensions in this new domain. Without modern space traffic agreements, the contest for orbital instruments of national security may threaten the very satellite infrastructure that sustains the global economy. Look, it can be overwhelming to think about what our world will look like in the next 1, 5, 10, or even 50 years. It can be daunting to contemplate war, suffering, and the relentless march of technology in the pursuit of power. But I am still of the mind that international security doesn't always have to be a zero-sum game, and call me naive, but I still believe that security for one doesn't have to come at the expense of the insecurity of another. One quote that I have thought about throughout the past few months is one by Andrew Carnegie. Peace wins her way not by force. Her appeal is to the reason and the conscience of man. Here is the bottom line up front. If you have reason, and if you have a conscience, you can build a more secure world. Until next time, I'm Noah Tan, and this has been Bottom Line Up Front. Bottom Line Up Front is written entirely outside of Noah's professional capacity. His views are not necessarily representative of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace or Stanford University. Noah declares no conflicts of interest. All errors are his own. Enjoy the holidays, have a happy new year, and we'll see you next season. Thanks for listening.